Some stories aren't meant to be told, but this one must be. It's a story of silence, betrayal, and a promise that was never supposed to be broken. If you're ready for something unforgettable, subscribe and join our growing community of story lovers. And when it's over, tell me, who do you think was really at fault? The truth begins now.
The champagne flutes clinked with a sound like shattering glass, each crystalline note sending a spike of nausea through my stomach. I kept my eyes down, focusing on the polished marble floor beneath my feet as I moved through the crowd with a silver tray balanced on my palm. The Venetian ballroom of the Plaza Hotel reeked of old money and older sins. Cigar smoke, expensive perfume that couldn't quite mask the smell of desperation, and something metallic that I'd learned to recognize as fear disguised as power. My uniform was too tight across the chest, the black fabric straining with each breath. They'd given me one size too small deliberately, I suspected. A reminder that even here, serving at one of New York's most exclusive events, I was still just a commodity, just like I'd always been. "More champagne, signorina," an elderly man barked, not looking at me as he thrust his empty glass in my direction. His fingers, heavy with gold rings, grazed my wrist deliberately. I pulled back, but not before feeling the cold metal against my skin, a sensation that made my flesh crawl. "Of course, signore." The Italian came automatically now, after 6 months of these events. 6 months since my father had looked at me across our kitchen table, the one piece of furniture we still owned, and told me what I'd always feared, that I was the solution to all his problems. I refilled the glass and moved away quickly, my heels clicking against the marble. The sound echoed in my ears, competing with the string quartet in the corner and the low murmur of conversations conducted in multiple languages. I caught fragments as I passed, deals being made, territories being divided, lives being bartered like poker chips. My lower back ached. I'd been on my feet for 5 hours already, and the night was far from over. This was the engagement party, though calling it that felt like a sick joke, more like an auction where the merchandise had already been sold. I touched the small locket at my throat, my mother's, the only thing of hers I still had, and tried to steady my breathing. The panic attacks had started 2 months ago, right after my father had shown me the contract. My signature, forged but legal enough in the world these men inhabited. The debt, $3 million in gambling losses. The payment, me. Ragazza. A sharp voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. Signora Bellini, the event coordinator, appeared at my elbow like a hawk spotting wounded prey. Her severe black suit matched her expression. "Table 7 needs immediate attention. Don't keep them waiting." Table 7. My stomach clenched. I'd been avoiding that corner of the ballroom all evening, but I should have known better. There was no avoiding anything tonight. I smoothed down my apron with trembling fingers and made my way across the room. The closer I got, the more the air seemed to thicken. I could feel eyes on me, not just watching, but assessing, calculating my value down to the last dollar. Marco Vulture sat at the head of table 7 like a king on his throne, if kings were made of decaying flesh barely held together by expensive suits. He was 70 if he was a day, with yellowing teeth that showed when he smiled, and eyes like a corpse that hadn't quite realized it was dead yet. They called him Il Avvoltoio, the Vulture, and looking at him now, skeletal fingers wrapped around a whiskey glass, I understood why. "Ah, here she is." His voice was surprisingly strong for a man who looked half embalmed. "My blushing bride." I wasn't blushing. If anything, I'd gone pale. I could feel the blood draining from my face as I approached the table, my training the only thing keeping my hands steady on the tray. "Signore Vulture." I kept my voice neutral, professional, as if this were just another client, as if he weren't the man who would own me in 3 days' time. "Closer, Bella." He gestured with one skeletal hand. "Let me look at what I've purchased." The men around the table laughed, harsh sounds that held no humor. I recognized some of them. Vitale, who controlled the docks. Russo, whose name appeared in the papers whenever a witness disappeared before trial. And my father, sitting 2 seats down, unable to meet my eyes. I stepped forward because refusing wasn't an option. Not here. Not with these men. Vulture's hand shot out faster than I expected, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. His skin felt like parchment, dry and papery, but his grip was iron. "Good bone structure," he said clinically, as if I were a horse he was considering for purchase. His free hand came up to tilt my chin, forcing me to look at him. His breath smelled like death and expensive scotch. "Virgin?" The question sent ice through my veins, but before I could answer, before I could do anything, a voice cut through the moment like a blade through silk. "I wouldn't touch that if I were you, Marco." The entire table went still. The kind of stillness that comes before violence. I turned my head as much as Vulture's grip would allow and saw him. Domenico Barone didn't walk into rooms. He took possession of them. Tall, broad-shouldered, he moved with the fluid grace of a predator who knew exactly how dangerous he was and didn't need to prove it. His suit was black, perfectly tailored, and probably cost more than my father's debt. But it was his eyes that caught me. Gold, almost amber in the ballroom's light, and completely devoid of mercy. "Barone." Vulture's grip on me loosened fractionally. "This is a private party." "Is it?" Domenico's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if smiles could kill. "I thought it was an engagement celebration, and I have such interest in this particular engagement." He was closer now, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke. His gaze swept over me once, assessing, then fixed on Vulture with an intensity that made the old man shift in his seat. "The girl is spoken for," Russo interjected, half rising from his chair. "The contract was signed under false pretenses." Domenico's voice didn't rise, but it carried absolute authority. Antonio Vitali sold something that didn't belong to him. My father finally looked up, his face gray with fear. "I had every right. You had nothing." The words were quiet, lethal. Aurora Vitali was already claimed. She just didn't know it yet. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself, my mind racing. Claimed? By this man I'd never met? "This is absurd," Vulture snarled, but there was uncertainty creeping into his voice now. "Show me the papers." "Papers?" Domenico's laugh was cold. "You want papers, Vecchio? Fine. But know this, I don't need documents to justify what's mine. I take what belongs to me. And she belongs to me." His hand closed around my arm, not roughly, but with unmistakable possession, and pulled me away from Vulture's grip. The old man released me immediately, which told me everything I needed to know about the power dynamics in this room. "You're making a mistake, Barone," Vulture said, his voice shaking now with something between rage and fear. "The families won't stand for this." "The families," Domenico said softly, dangerously, "will do exactly what I tell them to do. Because I'm not some dying vulture clinging to relevance. I'm the man who decides who lives and who doesn't. And right now, Marco, you're on very thin ice." He began walking, pulling me with him toward the ballroom entrance. I stumbled in my heels, my mind struggling to process what was happening. Behind us, I could hear chairs scraping, voices rising in confusion and anger. My father calling my name, Vulture shouting about contracts and honor. But Domenico didn't pause, didn't hesitate. He moved through the crowd like it didn't exist, his grip on my arm firm, but not painful. People parted for him automatically, some lowering their eyes in deference or fear. "Wait," I managed, finding my voice at last. "What are you doing? You can't just..." Can't I? He glanced down at me, those gold eyes holding mine for a heartbeat. Watch me, Bella. I just did. We were at the door now. Two men in dark suits materialized from somewhere, his security clearly, flanking us as we exited into the marble hallway. The sounds of chaos from the ballroom faded behind heavy doors. I don't understand, I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to control it. What did you mean? I was already claimed? I've never even seen you before. He stopped walking then, turning to face me fully for the first time. This close I could see the sharp planes of his face, the slight shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his dark hair fell just slightly across his forehead despite being carefully styled back. He was younger than most of the men in that room, mid-30s, maybe, but carried himself with an authority that made age irrelevant. You haven't seen me, he agreed, his voice softer now that we were alone. But I've seen you, Aurora Vitali. I've watched you serve drinks with your head held high despite the way those bastards look at you. I've watched you flinch when your father walks in the room. I've watched you touch that locket at your throat whenever you're afraid. His hand came up, and I flinched instinctively, but he only traced the air near my mother's locket without actually touching it or me. I've been watching you for 3 months, he continued, since the first night you worked one of these events. And when I learned what your father had done, what he'd sold you into, I decided something very simple. That wouldn't be happening. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. You don't know me. Why would you care? Something flickered in those gold eyes. Something I couldn't quite identify. Because men like Vulture don't deserve to touch women like you. Because your father is a coward who deserves what's coming to him. And because, Bella, when I want something, I take it. You're mine now, whether you accept that yet or not. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something else. A strange, twisted relief. Because however dangerous this man was, whatever his motives, he wasn't Marco Vulture. He wasn't 70 years old with dead eyes and hands that felt like corpse fingers on my skin. What happens now? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. His smile was sharp, predatory. Now, Bella, you come home with me, to my penthouse, where you'll be safe from Vulture and your father and anyone else who thinks they have a claim on you. You'll stay there, under my protection, until I've resolved this complication. And after that? After that, his thumb traced along my jaw in a gesture that was both gentle and possessive. We'll see what you're worth, won't we? The doors behind us burst open. Vulture appeared, flanked by his men, his face purple with rage. You think you can just walk out with my property? The contract is void. Domenico didn't even turn around. Send your lawyers, Marco. Send your soldiers. Send whoever you want. But understand this. She's in my territory now, under my protection. And if you're stupid enough to try to take her back, I'll gut you myself and feed what's left to the dogs. The threat was delivered in the same tone one might use to discuss the weather. Calm, certain, absolute. Vulture's men shifted, hands moving toward weapons, but the old man held up a hand. He was smart enough to know when he was outmatched. For now. This isn't over, Barone. No. Domenico agreed, finally glancing back over his shoulder. It's not. But it will be. Soon. Then he was moving again, pulling me toward the exit, toward a future I couldn't begin to predict. As we stepped out into the cool October night, I took one last look back at the Plaza Hotel, at the life I'd known, however terrible it had been. I was Aurora Vitali, sold to a vulture, stolen by a wolf. And somehow, I suspected, the real danger was just beginning. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building in Tribeca that I'd only ever seen in magazines. The private elevator opened directly into the living space, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River, furniture that whispered rather than shouted wealth, and an eerie silence that made my earlier panic feel like white noise by comparison. Domenico released my arm once we were inside, moving toward a bar cart with the ease of someone completely at home in his domain. I remained frozen by the elevator, my mind finally catching up to what had just happened. "You kidnapped me," I said, the words tumbling out. He poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal tumbler, not bothering to look at me. "I liberated you. There's a difference. Not legally." "Legally," he turned then, those gold eyes finding mine across the room. "You were sold by your father to settle a gambling debt. So forgive me if I'm not particularly concerned about legal technicalities, Bella." He had a point. A terrifying, accurate point. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to think. "What do you want from me?" "Want?" He considered the question, taking a slow sip of his drink. "That's complicated. What I need is simpler. I need you alive and away from Marco Vulture." "Why?" "Because his purchase of you was the final piece in something much larger than one old man's depravity." He gestured to the sofa. "Sit. You look like you're about to collapse." I wanted to refuse out of principle, but my legs were shaking and my feet ached from 5 hours in heels. I moved to the sofa, sinking into leather so soft it felt like a sin. Domenico followed, but didn't sit. Instead, he prowled the space like a caged predator, speaking as he moved. 3 families have been positioning themselves to take over the Baroni territory for years. Vulture, despite his age and deterioration, still controls significant assets, including the judges who could legitimize certain transfers of power. Your engagement to him was supposed to be the seal on an alliance. You were the bridge, Aurora. The pretty package that would allow blood money to be laundered through legitimate channels. I don't understand. How could marrying me accomplish that? His smile was sharp. Your mother's maiden name was Castellano. You didn't know that, did you? The world tilted. That's impossible. My mother was the illegitimate daughter of Don Castellano, born before he married and had his legitimate heirs. She was hidden, kept secret. But the bloodline is there, which means you, Bella, carry a claim to the Castellano fortune, a claim that Marco Vulture intended to exploit through marriage. I couldn't breathe. My mother had died when I was 8, leaving me with only fragments of memories and that locket. She'd never spoken about her family, and I'd assumed it was because they were dead or had disowned her. You're lying. I wish I were. He finally stopped moving, standing before the windows with the city lights creating a halo around his silhouette. I've had investigators tracking this for months. The moment your father put you up as collateral, I knew exactly what was happening. Marco wasn't just buying a young wife. He was buying access to power that could destabilize everything. Then why did you take me? If I'm that valuable? Exactly because you're that valuable. He turned, and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. Marco Vulture is a symptom, Aurora. The disease is the consortium behind him. Old families clinging to power through any means necessary. If they'd gotten you, legitimized their claim through you, the bloodshed would have been catastrophic. Hundreds would have died in the territorial wars that followed. So you saved me to save yourself. I saved you because letting Marco have you would have been unconscionable. He moved closer, each step deliberate. But yes, Bella, I'm not doing this out of pure altruism. Keeping you alive and away from them serves my interests. I won't lie to you about that. The honesty was somehow worse than a comfortable lie would have been. I stood, needing to put distance between us, and walked to the windows. The city sprawled beneath us, millions of lights representing millions of lives that had no idea men like Domenico Baroni existed. What happens now? I asked again, the same question I'd asked outside the plaza. Now you stay here, under my protection, while I dismantle the consortium piece by piece. It will take time, weeks, maybe months. They'll try to negotiate, to threaten, to bribe. They might even try to take you back by force. His reflection appeared in the glass beside mine. But they'll fail, because I don't lose, Aurora. Not ever. You're very confident. I'm very good at what I do. I turned to face him, and found him closer than I'd expected. Close enough to smell that cedar and smoke scent, to see the flecks of darker gold in his amber eyes. And what is it you do? Exactly. His smile was slow, dangerous. I'm the Soto Capo of New York, second only to the Don himself. I control the ports, the unions, half the judges, and most of the politicians. When the families have disputes they can't resolve, they come to me. When someone needs to disappear, they come to me. When problems arise that require solutions other men don't have the stomach for, they come to me. You're a monster. Yes. No denial, no justification. I am. But I'm the monster who's keeping you alive, so perhaps you should be grateful for that. The arrogance should have infuriated me. Instead, I felt something else entirely, a dark, twisted fascination with this man who spoke about violence, like it was weather patterns, and looked at me like I was something precious and dangerous simultaneously. I want to see the proof, I said suddenly. The documents about my mother, the investigation, all of it. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Tomorrow. Tonight you need rest. Elena will show you to your room. Elena? A woman appeared from a hallway I hadn't noticed. Late 50s, severe gray hair pulled into a bun, wearing a simple black dress. Her expression was carefully neutral as she approached. Elena has been with my family for 30 years, Domenico explained. She'll help you get settled. If you need anything at all, ask her. This way, Signorina, Elena said, her voice surprisingly warm despite her severe appearance. I followed her down a corridor lined with what looked like original artwork, Renaissance pieces that belonged in museums. She opened a door to reveal a bedroom that was larger than the entire apartment I'd shared with my father. The bed was a 4-poster monstrosity draped in cream silk, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered a different view of the city. There are clothes in the closet, Elena said, moving to open doors that revealed more designer pieces than I'd ever seen outside a department store. All in your size. Signor Barone was very specific about what should be available. How did he know my size? Elena's expression didn't change. Signor Barone is very thorough in his preparations. The bathroom is through there. If you're hungry, I can bring something up. I'm not hungry. I was too twisted up inside to even think about food. She nodded. Then I'll leave you to rest. But Signorina, you should know. Signor Barone has never brought a woman here before. This penthouse is his private sanctuary. The fact that you're here speaks to how seriously he takes your protection. Before I could respond, she was gone, closing the door softly behind her. I moved to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. My reflection stared back at me. Dark hair disheveled from the evening's chaos, my mother's locket still at my throat, my eyes wide with shock that hadn't quite processed into acceptance yet. 24 hours ago, I'd been serving drinks and counting down to a nightmare wedding. Now I was in the penthouse of one of New York's most dangerous men, apparently carrying a bloodline that made me valuable enough to start wars over. A soft knock interrupted my spiraling thoughts. Assuming it was Elena returning, I called, "Come in." But it was Domenico who entered, now dressed in black slacks and a white dress shirt with the top 3 buttons undone, revealing a glimpse of defined chest. He carried a leather folder. "I thought you said tomorrow," I said, eyeing the folder. "I changed my mind. You should see this now." He handed it to me, then moved to lean against the wall near the window, giving me space. It's not pleasant reading. I opened the folder with trembling fingers. Inside were documents, photographs, legal papers, birth certificates showing my mother's lineage, investigation reports detailing the consortium's plans, and photographs, surveillance photos of me serving drinks, walking home from work, even sleeping in my tiny bedroom in my father's apartment. "You've been watching me for 3 months," I said, my voice hollow. "I needed to understand who you were. If you were complicit in your father's schemes, if you were aware of your value, if you were a threat." "And what did you decide?" His gaze was steady, unflinching. "That you were a victim, that you had no idea what you'd been born into, and that you deserved better than being sold to a corpse like Marco Vulture." I stared at the photographs, at the evidence of my entire life being dissected and analyzed by this man's investigators. I should have been furious, should have felt violated, but instead, I felt something else. A strange relief that someone had been watching. Someone had cared enough to know the truth. "My father knew," I said, realization dawning. "He knew about my mother's family. That's why he kept me around all these years despite hating me. I wasn't his daughter. I was his insurance policy." "Yes." The simple confirmation broke something in me. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the folder falling from my numb fingers. All those years of his contempt, his casual cruelty, the way he'd looked at me like I was less than human, it had all been calculation. I'd never been his daughter. I'd only ever been an asset waiting to be cashed in. The bed dipped as Domenico sat beside me, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "Your mother tried to leave," he said quietly. "The documents show she attempted to take you and disappear when you were 7. But your father found her. And 2 months later, she died in what was ruled an accident." I looked at him sharply. "You think he killed her?" "I think your mother knew the danger you were in and tried to protect you. And I think someone made sure she couldn't." His hand moved as if to touch my shoulder, then stopped, hovering in the air before dropping back to his side. "I'm sorry, Aurora. You deserve to know the truth." "Truth?" I laughed, the sound bitter. "I don't even know what that means anymore. Everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie." "Not everything. You're strong, that's true. Surviving your father's neglect, working those events with grace despite how those men looked at you, that takes real strength." I turned to look at him, this dangerous man with gold eyes who spoke about murder as casually as weather patterns. "Why do you care? Really? You could have just taken me, locked me away, used me however you needed to. Why bother with explanations and folders and pretending I have any choice in this?" His expression shifted, something almost vulnerable crossing his features before the mask of control slammed back into place. "Because you remind me of someone I failed to save once. And because, Bella, whether you believe it or not, I prefer my possessions to come willingly. I'm not your possession. Aren't you?" He stood, looking down at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "You're in my home, wearing clothes I provided, protected by my name. Marco Vulture thinks you're mine now. So does every other family in this city. Whether you accept it or not, Aurora, you belong to me. The only question is whether you'll fight against that reality or embrace it." He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. "The door isn't locked. You could leave if you wanted to. Take the elevator down, walk out into the city. But know this. The moment you step outside this building, you're vulnerable. Marco's men are already looking for you. Your father will sell you out the second he's pressured. The only safety you have is here, with me. That's not really a choice." "No," he agreed. "It's not. But it's the only one you have. Welcome to my world, Bella. Sleep well." After he left, I sat in that enormous bedroom for hours, staring at the folder's contents spread across the silk duvet. Evidence of a life I'd never known I had. A value I'd never understood. A danger I'd been walking toward all along without realizing. Eventually, I changed into one of the silk nightgowns in the closet. Of course it fit perfectly, and climbed into the massive bed. The sheets were softer than anything I'd ever felt, but sleep eluded me. Somewhere in this building was a man who'd stolen me from my wedding, who'd been watching me for months, who claimed ownership of me with the same certainty most people claimed their own names. And the most terrifying part? I wasn't sure I wanted to run. Morning came too soon, and not soon enough. I'd finally fallen asleep near dawn, and woke to find sunlight streaming through the massive windows and Elena entering with a breakfast tray. "Signor Barone thought you might prefer to eat in your room this morning," she said, setting the tray on a small table near the window. "But he requests your presence in his office at 10. I glanced at the clock, 9:15. Enough time to shower and make myself presentable for whatever this request entailed. The bathroom was a study in marble and glass, with a shower large enough for 4 people and water pressure that felt like heaven on my tense muscles. I took longer than necessary, letting the steam and heat work out some of the knots in my shoulders. The closet yielded a simple black dress, elegant but not ostentatious, and low heels that were infinitely more comfortable than the ones I'd worn last night. I left my hair down, touching my mother's locket for courage, before stepping into the hallway. Elena was waiting. "This way, signorina." Domenico's office was all dark wood and leather, with bookshelves lining 2 walls and a massive desk positioned before windows overlooking downtown. He stood when I entered, wearing charcoal slacks and a black dress shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing corded forearms. "Aurora, thank you for coming." As if I'd had a choice. "Please sit." I took one of the leather chairs facing his desk, keeping my spine straight and my expression neutral. He settled into his own chair, studying me with those unsettling gold eyes. "You slept poorly. How could you possibly know that?" "Elena reports everything to me, and..." His lips curved slightly. "You have shadows under your eyes. Forgive me for not sleeping well after being kidnapped." "Liberated," he corrected, echoing his words from last night. "And you're not a prisoner, Aurora. You're a guest. There's a difference. A guest who can't leave. A guest who would be dead within hours if she did." His expression hardened. "Marco's men attempted to breach the building's security last night. 3 times. They were unsuccessful, obviously, but they're not giving up. Neither is your father. He's been calling everyone he knows, trying to negotiate your return." The news shouldn't have surprised me, but it still sent ice through my veins. "What did you do to them? Marco's men?" "Nothing permanent. This time." He leaned back in his chair. "But it confirms what I suspected. Marco is desperate, which means the consortium is applying pressure. They need you to legitimize their claim. I still don't understand why marrying me would give them access to the Castellano fortune. My mother was illegitimate. In the old world, that would have mattered. In ours?" He shrugged. "Bloodline is bloodline, especially when there are no other living Castellano heirs. Don Castellano died 15 years ago without legitimate children. His estate has been in legal limbo ever since. Your existence, your lineage, it's the key to unlocking billions in assets." "Billions?" The number was incomprehensible. The Castellano family wasn't just wealthy, they were strategic. Real estate across 3 continents, legitimate businesses worth hundreds of millions, and that's before you factor in the less legal operations. He pulled a file from his desk drawer. "This is your inheritance, Aurora. Assuming we can prove your claim and keep you alive long enough to assert it." I took the file with numb fingers, flipping through pages of property deeds, business holdings, Account statements. The numbers blurred together, too large to process. I don't want this, I said finally. Any of it. The money, the power, the danger. I just want to live my life. That's not an option anymore. His voice was gentle but firm. The moment your father sold you to Marco, the moment I took you from that ballroom, your old life ended. The only question now is what kind of new life you'll have. I set the file on his desk. And what life are you offering me? Protection, resources, power if you want it. He stood, circling the desk to lean against it, closer to me. The consortium wants to use you as a key to open the Castellano vault. I'm offering to help you claim it for yourself. Keep what's yours. Control your own destiny. In exchange for what? His smile was sharp. Your loyalty. Your cooperation in dismantling the consortium. And his gaze traveled over me in a way that made heat pool low in my stomach. Your presence here, in my home, under my protection and my authority. You mean under your control. Control, protection. With me, they're the same thing. He moved closer, and I found myself tilting my head back to maintain eye contact. I won't lie to you, Aurora. I'm possessive of what's mine. And you are mine now, whether you've accepted it yet or not. But I'm not your father, and I'm not Marco Vulture. I won't neglect you, and I certainly won't sell you. What I will do is keep you safe, give you choices when I can, and teach you how to survive in this world. And if I refuse, then you'll still be here, still under my protection, still mine. But you'll fight it every step, make yourself miserable, and waste the potential I see in you. His hand came up, and this time he did touch me, his fingers tracing along my jaw with surprising gentleness. You're stronger than you know, Bella. I saw it in those photographs. The way you held yourself with dignity, even when serving men who looked at you like meat. That strength, properly channeled, could make you dangerous. I should have pulled away from his touch. Should have stood up, walked out, maintained some kind of boundary. But I couldn't seem to move, caught in the intensity of his gaze. Dangerous to whom? To the men who think they can use you. To the consortium. To anyone foolish enough to see you as just another pawn. His thumb traced my lower lip, and I felt my breath catch. I could make you a queen, Aurora. Not a trophy wife for a dying vulture, but a real queen with real power. All you have to do is trust me. I don't even know you. Then let me tell you who I am. He pulled back, giving me space to breathe again. Moving to the window, he spoke with his back to me. I was born Domenico Barone, son of Antonio Barone, grandson of Don Salvatore Barone. I was raised to take over the family business, trained from childhood in everything from negotiation to the proper way to dispose of a body. When I was 16, my father was killed by the Russo family. I killed them all within a year. Every man who'd been in that room. Every person who'd known and done nothing. I was 17 when I took my father's place. He turned, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Not vulnerability exactly, but a glimpse beneath the armor. When I was 23, I fell in love. Her name was Sophia. She was everything I wasn't. Soft, kind, optimistic. She thought she could save me, reform me, make me into something other than what I was. His jaw tightened. The Castellano family found out about her. Used her to try to manipulate me. When I refused to back down, they killed her. Made it look like an accident, just like they did with your mother. Understanding dawned. That's who I remind you of. No. His answer was firm. Sophia was weak. Sweet, but weak. She couldn't survive in this world. couldn't understand what it required. You, Aurora. You're different. You've lived with a monster for a father, worked for monsters in tuxedos, survived years of neglect and cruelty, and kept your dignity intact. Sophia would have broken under what you've endured. But you're still here, still fighting, still strong. He moved back toward me, and this time when he touched my face, there was something almost tender in the gesture. I failed Sophia because I tried to keep her separate from my world. I won't make that mistake with you. You're already part of this world, Bella. I'm just teaching you how to thrive in it instead of merely surviving. By making me yours. By making you mine, he agreed. And by being yours in return. That's what possession means in my world. Not one-sided control, but mutual protection. Mutual loyalty. You belong to me, yes. But I also belong to you. Your enemies are my enemies. Your safety is my priority. Your future is my responsibility. That's not love. No, he agreed. It's better. Love is weak, fleeting, easily manipulated. This is permanent, unbreakable. The families will recognize you as mine, which means you're untouchable. Even if you hate me, even if you never forgive me for taking you from that ballroom, you'll still have my protection. Always. I stood, needing to move, to process. Walking to the window, I looked out at the city below, all those people living normal lives, unaware of the darkness that existed in their midst. Show me, I said finally, my decision crystallizing. If you want me to trust you to accept this, then show me everything. Not just the documents and the surveillance photos. Show me your world. What you do, how you do it, why these people fear you. If I'm going to survive here, I need to understand it all. His reflection appeared in the glass beside mine, his expression unreadable. That's a dangerous request. You said I was already dangerous. So show me how to be dangerous properly. His laugh was low, appreciative. Very well, Bella. But understand, once you see, you can't unsee. Once you know, you're complicit. There's no innocent claiming ignorance after that. I lost my innocence the day my father told me I was being sold to pay his debts. Show me, Domenico. If I'm yours, if this is permanent, then I want to know exactly what I'm part of. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Tonight, then, we have a meeting with the Vitale family. They control the docks. It should be instructive. What kind of meeting? His smile was sharp, predatory. The kind where we negotiate who lives and who doesn't. The black Mercedes pulled up to a warehouse in Red Hook just after midnight. I sat in the back beside Domenico, my heart hammering despite my efforts to appear calm. I'd changed into clothes Elena had selected. Dark jeans, a black silk blouse, and a leather jacket that probably cost more than my father's car. Practical, but expensive. Not a victim, but not yet a queen. Remember, Domenico said as the car stopped, you don't speak unless I tell you to. You observe, learn. But most importantly, you show no fear. These men can smell weakness like sharks smell blood. Two of his security, Carlo and Marco, flanked us as we exited the car. The warehouse loomed before us, all rusted metal and shadows. Not the kind of place I'd ever imagined myself entering voluntarily. Inside, the space had been converted into what looked like an office, expensive furniture, incongruous against industrial concrete walls. 5 men waited, and I recognized one immediately. Vitale, from the engagement party. His eyes widened when he saw me. Barone, he said carefully. I wasn't expecting company. Aurora is here to observe, Domenico replied, his hand settling possessively at the small of my back. She's under my protection, which means she's part of this family now. I thought it appropriate she understand how we conduct business. The girl from Marco's engagement. Vitale's smile didn't reach his eyes. There's been talk. The old man is furious. Let him be furious. Domenico guided me to a chair slightly behind and to the side of the main negotiating table. His fury is irrelevant. Shall we begin? What followed was a masterclass in controlled violence delivered through words. Domenico never raised his voice, never made an explicit threat. But the menace was there in every sentence, every pause, every cold smile. The Vitale family wanted to expand their control of the docks, moving into territory that traditionally belonged to the Barone family. Vitale presented his case smoothly: increased efficiency, better distribution networks, mutual profit. Your proposal has merit, Domenico said when he finished. But you've left out the most important detail. What detail? The reason you need this expansion. Domenico leaned back in his chair, the picture of relaxed power. The Russo family is pressuring you. They want access to your shipping routes, and you're considering giving it to them in exchange for protection. Vitale's face went carefully blank. I don't know what you're... Don't. The single word, delivered with quiet intensity, cut through the lie. I have people in the Russo organization. I know about your meetings, about their threats. I know they've given you 1 month to decide, or they'll start destroying your operations piece by piece. Silence fell. I watched Vitale's face cycle through denial, calculation, and finally resignation. What do you want? He asked finally. Honesty, loyalty, and for you to remember who your real allies are. Domenico's gold eyes were unforgiving. The Russo family is part of the consortium backing Marco Vulture. They're using you to weaken me. If you give them access to your docks, you're not just betraying our alliance, you're signing your own death warrant. They'll destroy me if I refuse. They'll try. Domenico's smile was sharp. But they'll fail. Because I'm going to dismantle the Russo operation before they can touch you. All I need is your continued loyalty and information about their movements. In exchange for what? Your life, your family's safety, and... Domenico gestured casually. The territory expansion you wanted. Work with me, and you can have everything they promised without selling your soul to men who'll gut you the second you're no longer useful. I watched Vitale consider, saw the moment he made his choice. It was in the slight relaxation of his shoulders, the way his gaze shifted from calculating to accepting. What do you need from me? Dates, times, locations of your meetings with the Russos, names of who else they've approached, and complete transparency going forward. If they contact you, I want to know immediately. Done. Good. Domenico stood, the meeting clearly over. One more thing, Vitale. The girl. His hand found my shoulder, pulling me to stand beside him. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or even looks at her wrong answers to me personally. Spread that message. Aurora Vitale is under my protection, which means she's untouchable. Clear? Crystal. Vitale's gaze flicked to me, then away quickly. No disrespect intended, Signorina. I said nothing, just inclined my head slightly the way I'd seen Domenico do, playing the part. Back in the car, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. That's how you do it. Not violence, but the threat of violence. The certainty that you'll follow through. Violence is a tool, Domenico replied, his hand finding mine in the darkness. But it's the least elegant one. Better to make them choose to follow you than to force obedience. Vitale will be loyal now because he believes I'm his best option for survival. That's worth more than fear alone. And if he'd refused? Then Carlo would have put 2 bullets in his head, and we'd be negotiating with his second-in-command instead. He said it so matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather. This is the world you wanted to understand, Bella. Sometimes, people make bad choices. And sometimes, those choices are fatal. The car wound through Brooklyn streets, heading back toward Manhattan. I stared out the window, processing what I'd witnessed. The casual discussions of violence, the way Domenico wielded power like a surgeon with a scalpel. Precise, deliberate, effective. "You're not horrified," he observed. Should I be? Most people would be. I turned to look at him, his profile illuminated by passing streetlights. I'm not most people. I spent years watching my father gamble away everything we had, watching him choose his addiction over his daughter, watching him finally sell me to the highest bidder. You think I don't understand that the world is brutal? That monsters exist? I shook my head. At least you're honest about what you are. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or approval. You continue to surprise me, Aurora Vitali. Good. I'd hate to be predictable. His laugh was genuine, warm. You're many things, Bella, but predictable isn't one of them. We arrived back at the penthouse near 2 a.m. I should have been exhausted, but adrenaline still sang in my veins. Elena had left food in the kitchen, but I bypassed it for the living room, drawn to the floor-to-ceiling windows and the city lights beyond. You handled yourself well tonight, Domenico said, joining me with 2 glasses of wine. Many people would have panicked, shown fear. You remained composed. I was terrified, I admitted, accepting the glass. I know, but you didn't show it. That's what matters. He stood close, closer than necessary, his warmth a counterpoint to the cool glass in my hand. Fear is human, but how you handle that fear, that's what separates the victims from the survivors. And what am I? Victim or survivor? You're becoming something else entirely. His free hand came up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering against my skin. Something dangerous and beautiful and absolutely fascinating. The air between us seemed to thicken. I was hyper-aware of every point where we almost touched. His chest inches from mine, his breath warm against my temple, the heat radiating from his body. This is a bad idea, I whispered. What is? Whatever this is, you said possession, protection. You didn't say anything about this. This? His gold eyes held mine, challenging. Say it, Aurora. What is this? Attraction. The word came out breathless. Desire. Completely inappropriate given that you kidnapped me 3 days ago. Liberated, he corrected again, but there was heat in his voice now. And inappropriate? Bella, nothing about our situation is appropriate. But it is honest. I want you. I've wanted you since I first saw you serving drinks with your head held high, while men undressed you with their eyes. And you want me too, even though you probably hate yourself for it. I don't lie. His hand cupped my face, thumb tracing my lower lip. I can see it in the way you look at me, the way you lean in even when you're trying to pull away, the way your breath catches when I touch you. You're terrified of me, yes, but you're also drawn to me, to the power, the certainty, the promise of protection in a world that's never protected you. He was right, and I hated that he was right. But I also couldn't deny it anymore. This pull between us, this dark magnetism that had nothing to do with logic and everything to do with something primal and undeniable. I don't want you, I admitted. I know. His forehead touched mine, our noses almost brushing. But you do anyway. Just like I want you, even though it complicates everything. Even though it makes me vulnerable in ways I haven't been since Sophia. Even though it's dangerous for both of us. Then what do we do? His smile against my lips was both promise and threat. We stop fighting it. The kiss was inevitable, explosive. His mouth claimed mine with a hunger I matched. all the tension of the past 3 days igniting into something that burned away thought and fear and hesitation. His hands were in my hair, at my waist, pulling me against him, until there was no space between us. I gasped against his mouth, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss until I was dizzy with it. This wasn't gentle or tender. This was claiming, possession made physical. His hands traced the curves of my body through my clothes, memorizing, cataloging, owning. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his gold eyes were molten. "You're mine, Aurora. Say it." I stopped, the words catching in my throat. "Say it," he demanded, his hand at my throat now, not squeezing but holding, reminding me of his power even in this moment. "I need to hear you acknowledge it." "I'm yours," I whispered, and felt something inside me shift and settle. "God help me. I'm yours." His smile was triumphant, possessive. "Good. Because Bella, I'm never letting you go." The next 3 weeks blurred together in a haze of education and transformation. Domenico was true to his word. He showed me everything. Not just the meetings and negotiations, but the careful balance of power that kept his empire functioning. How he used information like currency, loyalty like gold, and fear like a scalpel. But it was what he didn't show me that I paid most attention to. The late-night phone calls he took in his office with the door closed. The meetings he attended without me. The careful way he avoided discussing certain aspects of the consortium's structure. I began keeping my own files, mentally cataloging everything I observed. The way Vitale deferred to Domenico but still maintained contact with the Russo family. How Marco Vulture's attempts to reclaim me had grown more desperate, more violent. The names that kept appearing in different contexts. Castellano lawyers, judges on the consortium's payroll, politicians who owed favors. And slowly a picture emerged. Not the one Domenico had painted of him as my protector, but something more complex. He was protecting me, yes, but he was also using me. My bloodline. My claim to the Castellano fortune. To position himself as the one who would legitimize the next power structure in the city. I was still a key, just a different lock. "You've been quiet today," Domenico observed one evening as we ate dinner in the penthouse. Another routine we'd established. Breakfast alone, dinner together, the hours between filled with my education in the family business. Just thinking. About? I set down my fork, meeting his gaze steadily, about what happens when we win. When you've dismantled the consortium and established me as the Castellano heir. What happens to me then? He was silent for a long moment, his gold eyes assessing. "What do you think happens?" "I think," I said carefully, "that I stop being useful. That a woman with billions in assets and a legitimate bloodline becomes a liability instead of a key, unless she's properly controlled." His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, or perhaps respect. "You've been paying attention. You taught me to pay attention, to observe, to question, to look beneath the surface." I leaned forward. "So I'm asking directly. When this is over, when I've served my purpose, what happens to me? You think I'll discard you? Marry you off to secure some alliance? I think you're a strategist, and I think I need to know what role I'm playing in your strategy beyond protected possession." He stood, moving around the table to stand beside me. His hand came to rest on my shoulder, not threatening but commanding attention. "You're right to question. It shows you're learning. But you're wrong about one thing. You're not going to stop being useful, Aurora. You're going to become indispensable." "How?" "By being exactly what you're becoming. Dangerous, intelligent, strategic. The Castellano fortune isn't just money, Bella. It's power, influence, connections. With me behind you and that bloodline in front of you, You could reshape this entire city. His hand slid to cup my face, tilting it up to meet his gaze. I don't want a trophy wife or a pawn. I want a queen. A partner who can stand beside me, who understands this world, who can be as ruthless as she needs to be. And if I don't want to be that, then you're lying to yourself. His thumb traced my lower lip. I've watched you these past weeks. The way you absorb information, the questions you ask, the observations you make. You have a gift for this, Aurora. You see patterns, connections that others miss. That's not something to waste. That's something to cultivate. I wanted to deny it, to insist I was just trying to survive. But he was right. I did have a gift for it, for seeing how the pieces fit together, for understanding motivations and leverage points. It was a darker version of the pattern recognition that had made me good at chess as a child. What if I said I wanted out, that I'd take my inheritance and disappear? I'd say you're welcome to try. His smile was sharp. But you won't. Because you're starting to understand something important. Power isn't just about control. It's about choice. Right now, you have more choices than you've ever had in your life. You could run, yes, hide somewhere with all that money. But you'd always be looking over your shoulder, always wondering when the next threat would emerge. Or, his voice dropped lower, more intimate. You could stay, build something real with me, rule beside me, be the queen you were born to be. The offer was seductive, dangerous. Everything I'd never known I wanted, wrapped in the form of a man who terrified and fascinated me in equal measure. I need to think. Of course. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, surprisingly gentle. Take all the time you need, Bella. I'm patient when it matters. That night, I lay in my room staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. 3 weeks ago, I'd been sold to a monster. Now I was being offered a crown by another monster. But which monster was worse? The one who wanted to use me and discard me, or the one who wanted to make me complicit in his empire? My phone, a new one Domenico had given me, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. If you want to know the truth about your mother's death, meet me at Cafe Reggio tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. A friend. I stared at the message for a long moment. It was obviously a trap. Had to be. Marco trying to lure me out, or maybe someone from the consortium. But the mention of my mother's death made me hesitate. Domenico had said it wasn't an accident, but he'd never given me details, never told me who was responsible. I deleted the message, then lay back down. But sleep didn't come. Because I knew, trap or not, I was going to that meeting. The next morning, I told Domenico I wanted to go shopping. I need clothes that are actually mine, not just provided by you. And Elena mentioned a boutique downtown that specializes in Italian designers. He studied me for a moment, and I kept my expression neutral, hopeful. Finally, he nodded. Carlo will drive you. Don't leave his sight. Of course. The boutique was 2 blocks from Cafe Reggio. I spent an hour trying on clothes, building a pile of purchases, acting every inch the protected Mafia girlfriend. Then I excused myself to the bathroom, slipped out the back exit, and walked quickly toward the cafe. Carlo would realize I was missing within minutes. I had perhaps 10 minutes before Domenico's entire security apparatus descended on this neighborhood. But I had to know. Had to understand what really happened to my mother. The cafe was old-world Italian, all dark wood and espresso machines that looked like they'd been there since the 1920s. I scanned the space and saw him in the back corner, a man in his 60s with silver hair and a face I'd seen in Domenico's files. Giovanni Russo, head of the Russo family, part of the consortium. I should have turned around and walked out. Should have known better than to walk into such an obvious trap. But my mother's face floated before me, and I found myself sliding into the booth across from him. Aurora Vitali. he said, his voice warm, grandfatherly. Nothing like the monster I'd expected. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. You have 3 minutes to tell me about my mother before Domenico's men drag me out of here. His smile was sad. Direct. I like that. Very well. He pushed a manila envelope across the table. Your mother, Lucia Castellano, came to me 20 years ago. She was pregnant with you, running from your father, and desperate for help. I gave her money, a new identity, a chance to disappear. Why would you help her? Because Lucia and I were friends. Before she met your father, before everything went wrong, we grew up together. I loved her, he said simply. Not romantically. She was like a sister to me. And when she came to me terrified and pregnant, I helped her the only way I could. I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, my mother, younger than I'd ever seen her, smiling. And beside her, a young Giovanni Russo. Documents showing money transfers, a safe deposit box key. Your father found out, Giovanni continued. He tracked her down using connections to the Castellano family. Your grandfather, actually. The Don wanted to know if his illegitimate daughter had produced an heir. When your father realized what you were worth, what leverage you represented, he made a deal. He'd keep you close, raise you under his control, and when the time was right, he'd sell you to the highest bidder. And my mother? She tried to stop him, threatened to expose the whole scheme, so they killed her. His eyes were ancient with sorrow. I tried to protect her, Aurora. I had men watching your building, but I wasn't fast enough. By the time we realized what was happening, she was already dead. Who killed her? My father. No, he didn't have the stomach for it. It was Antonio Baroni, Domenico's father. He was working with your grandfather then, helping to keep the Castellano assets consolidated. Lucia was a loose end, so he cut her off. The world tilted. Domenico's father. Which meant Domenico had known all along, had known exactly who killed my mother when he showed me those files. Why tell me this? I asked, my voice hollow. Because Domenico is using you the same way everyone else has. He's not your savior, Aurora. He's not protecting you out of nobility. He's positioning you so that when he legitimizes your claim to the Castellano fortune, he'll control you and everything you inherit. You're not his queen. You're his puppet with billions of dollars in strings. And you're telling me this out of the goodness of your heart? No, he admitted. I'm telling you because I want you to see clearly. Make your own choices. Your mother died because she had no power, no protection, no way to fight back against the men who saw her as a tool. You don't have to repeat her mistakes. What are you offering? An alliance. The consortium isn't what Domenico has painted it to be. Yes, Marco Vulture is a monster. We're cutting him out. But the rest of us? We're trying to bring order to chaos. With your bloodline legitimized and our backing, you could claim your inheritance without being anyone's possession. Not mine, not Domenico's. Your own woman, with real power. It was a pretty speech, a tempting offer, and probably, I thought, complete bullshit. I need to think about this. Of course, but think quickly. Domenico is moving against us. In a week, maybe 2, the war will be open and bloody. Choose your side before you're forced into one. I stood, clutching the envelope. If you were really my mother's friend, you wouldn't have let her die. His face crumpled. I know. That's why I'm trying to save you. Don't let me fail twice. I walked out of the cafe into chaos. Carlo was there with 3 other men, their faces a mixture of relief and fury. Domenico stood beside his Mercedes, and his expression made my blood run cold. Get in the car, he said quietly. Now. The ride back to the penthouse was silent, tension thick enough to choke on. Domenico sat beside me, his body rigid with controlled fury. I clutched Giovanni's envelope, my mind racing through lies and truth and trying to decide which to offer. We rode the elevator in silence, walked through the penthouse in silence. Only when we were in his office with the door closed did he finally speak. What the fuck were you thinking? I was thinking I wanted answers about my mother. From Giovanni Russo? Do you have any idea how easily he could have killed you? How that could have been a trap? It was a trap, I shot back. Just not the kind you're thinking. He wanted to turn me against you, plant doubts about your motives. And did he succeed? Domenico's gold eyes bored into mine. Are you doubting me now, Aurora? Should I be? I threw the envelope onto his desk. He says your father killed my mother. Is that true? The silence stretched. Domenico's expression didn't change, but I saw the answer in the tightness around his eyes, the slight clench of his jaw. Yes, he said finally. My father killed your mother. I found out 6 months ago, when I first learned about your existence. It's one of the reasons I was watching you. Guilt, perhaps. Or a desire to make amends for sins that weren't mine but carried my name. You lied to me. I omitted, he corrected. There's a difference. You needed protection, not more trauma. Would knowing earlier have changed anything? It would have changed everything. You're asking me to trust you, to belong to you, and you've been lying from the beginning. I've never lied to you. His voice rose for the first time. Not once. I've told you exactly what I am, what I want, what I offer. Yes, I kept the truth about my father's actions from you, because telling you would have destroyed any chance of you accepting my protection, and you needed that protection more than you needed to hate me. I do hate you, I said, but the words felt hollow. No, you don't. He moved toward me, and I backed up until I hit his desk. You hate what I represent, what my father did, the world you've been dragged into. But you don't hate me, because I've never pretended to be anything other than what I am, a monster trying to protect you from worse monsters. Giovanni says you're using me, that I'm not your queen, just your puppet. And you believe him? Domenico's laugh was bitter. Aurora, use your head. Why would Giovanni Russo, a man who let your mother die, suddenly care about your freedom? He wants the same thing everyone wants, access to the Castellano fortune through you. The only difference is, I'm honest about it. So you admit you're using me? Of course I am. The admission was sharp, frustrated. I've never pretended otherwise. Yes, I took you from Marco. Yes, I'm using your bloodline to position myself. Yes, making you my queen serves my interests. But Aurora... His hands came up to frame my face, forcing me to look at him. I'm also giving you power. Real power. Not just protection and pretty clothes, but actual influence, education, choice. Giovanni is offering you the illusion of freedom while planning to control you just as thoroughly as he claims I am. How do I know who to trust? You don't. His forehead touched mine. That's the real hell of this world, Bella. Everyone has an agenda. Everyone wants something. The question isn't who to trust. It's who's honest about what they want and who's giving you the best deal. And what are you giving me? Everything. His lips brushed mine, barely a kiss. My protection, my resources, my name. A partnership where you have real power, not just the appearance of it. And his voice dropped lower, more intimate. Me. All of me. Without lies or illusions about what I am. I pushed against his chest, needing space to think. I need time. To process this, to figure out what I want. You don't have time. His expression hardened. Giovanni didn't reach out to you from kindness. He's making his move. The consortium is fracturing. Marco's desperation has made him a liability, and the smart players are positioning themselves for what comes next. In the next 48 hours, this city is going to explode into war, and you need to choose where you stand before the shooting starts. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Bella, but it is honest. So I'm asking you now, directly, are you with me or against me? I looked at this man who'd stolen me, educated me, seduced me, and lied to me. This dangerous, beautiful monster who promised me a crown and meant it. And I realized Giovanni had been wrong about one thing. I wasn't my mother. I wasn't running. Wasn't hoping for rescue. I was standing in the heart of the storm, being offered power by a man who'd never pretended to be anything other than what he was. I'm with you, I said finally. But on one condition. Name it. No more omissions. No more protected truths. If we're partners, I need to know everything. Not filtered, not softened. Everything. His smile was slow, dangerous, approving. Done. Welcome to the war, Queen Aurora. The war came faster than even Domenico expected. Giovanni Russo made his move 2 days later, a coordinated attack on 3 Barone holdings simultaneously. The message was clear. The consortium was done negotiating. I watched from Domenico's office as he orchestrated the response, phones ringing constantly, men coming and going with reports of damage and casualties. This was the reality beneath the polished surface, blood and fire and men dying for pieces of territory and power. The warehouse in Brooklyn is lost, Carlo reported, his face grim. 4 of our men dead, 6 wounded. The Russos hit it with 15 soldiers. And the shipping company? Secure. Your tip about the timing was accurate. My tip, because I'd remembered something Giovanni had said during our cafe meeting, a casual reference to morning operations that had felt off. I'd mentioned it to Domenico, and he'd reinforced that target's security. What about Marco? Domenico asked, and I heard the edge in his voice. The old Vulture had been quiet. Too quiet, since my escape. That's the strange part, Carlo said. No movement from his people. It's like he's waiting for something. Domenico's gold eyes found mine across the room, and I saw understanding dawn. He's waiting for them to kill me. Then he'll move in, claim Aurora in the chaos, and legitimize his position through her before anyone can reorganize. Brilliant, I said bitterly. Let everyone else do the dirty work. It's actually quite smart for a dying man. Domenico moved to his desk, pulling up documents on his computer. But he's made one critical miscalculation. What's that? His smile was sharp. He's assuming I'll be too focused on the Russos to see him coming. What followed was a masterclass in strategic manipulation. Over the next week, while ostensibly fighting the Russo family, Domenico was actually feeding them information. Carefully calculated intelligence that made them believe they were winning. Warehouses he wanted destroyed anyway. Operations he'd already marked for reorganization. He gave ground strategically, making Giovanni confident, making him overextend. And I helped. Using the pattern recognition I'd discovered, I identified weak points in the consortium's alliance. Old grudges between families, competing interests, the places where loyalty was bought rather than earned. The Vitale family is wavering, I told Domenico one night as we reviewed intelligence reports in his office. Giovanni promised them the expanded dock control, but he can't deliver without taking your territory first. They're starting to question whether they backed the right side. Confirmed, Carlo added from his position by the door. Our source in Vitale's organization says the old man is considering reaching out. Then we give him a reason to flip. Domenico made a call, speaking rapid Italian, then hung up. Done. Vitale gets his territory expansion, but from us instead of Giovanni. That breaks 3 families from the consortium. Which leaves Giovanni, Marco, and the Castellano lawyers. Domenico's smile was cold. Time to remind them why nobody moves against the Barone family. The retaliation when it came was surgical. Not the messy gang war Marco and Giovanni had been expecting, but precise strikes that crippled their operations without the bloodbath they'd anticipated. Shipments intercepted. Bank accounts frozen through judges on Domenico's payroll. Key soldiers flipped with better offers. Within 10 days, the consortium was in shambles, and Giovanni Russo was desperate. He wants a meeting, Domenico told me. Just him, you, and me. Neutral ground. Says he has a proposal. It's a trap. Of course it is. But we're going anyway. His hand found mine. Because it's time to end this. And I want him to see what he's really up against. Not just me, but us. The meeting was set for a restaurant in Little Italy, Vincenzo's, owned by a family neutral in the current conflicts. We arrived with Carlo and 2 other guards, but they stayed outside per the agreed terms. Giovanni sat at a corner table, looking older than he had at the cafe. Tired, defeated. His eyes when they met mine held genuine regret. Aurora, Domenico, thank you for coming. You have 10 minutes, Domenico said, not bothering to sit. Talk. I'm offering surrender, unconditional. I'll dissolve the consortium, back Aurora's claim to the Castellano fortune, and retire from active operations. In exchange, you spare my family. My son, my grandchildren, they had no part in this. It was a complete capitulation. Everything Domenico had been fighting for, offered freely. Too freely. What's the catch? I asked. Giovanni smiled sadly. Smart girl. Your mother would be proud. He pulled an envelope from his jacket, similar to the one he'd given me before. The catch is what's in here. The truth about the Castellano fortune, about your grandfather, about why your mother really ran. Domenico's hand was on his gun instantly. Careful, Giovanni. I'm not threatening you. I'm warning her. Giovanni's eyes were on me. Your grandfather didn't just run criminal operations, Aurora. He ran something darker. Trafficking. Not drugs or guns. People. Women, specifically. Young women from Eastern Europe, sold into prostitution across his empire. Your mother found out when she was 17. That's why she ran. That's why she kept you hidden. She didn't want you claimed by that legacy. The words hit like physical blows. I sank into a chair, my mind racing. The fortune I'd been preparing to claim, the billions Domenico had been helping me access, it was built on the suffering of thousands of women. The Castellano fortune is blood money, Giovanni continued. Always has been. And by legitimizing your claim, Domenico isn't just making you a queen. He's making you complicit in atrocities that would make Marco Vulture look like a saint. That's ancient history, Domenico said, but his voice lacked certainty. The Don's been dead for 15 years. Those operations continue, Giovanni finished. Under new management, the Castellano lawyers, the ones who've been maintaining the fortune, they've been running the trafficking operation the entire time, using the legitimate businesses as fronts. If Aurora claims her inheritance, she doesn't just get money, she gets responsibility for hundreds of women currently being held, sold, destroyed. The room spun. I looked at Domenico, saw the truth in his face. He'd known. Maybe not the full extent, but he'd known the fortune wasn't clean. You knew, I said, my voice hollow. I suspected, he admitted. But Aurora, every fortune in our world has blood on it. The Barone money, the Russo money. It's all dirty. That's the nature of what we do. Not like this. I stood, my legs unsteady. Not trafficking. Not women. Not... I I couldn't finish the sentence. Giovanni stood as well. That's why I'm offering this. Dissolve the Castellano fortune. Shut down the operations. Free the women. I'll help you do it. Provide evidence, testimony, whatever you need. But in exchange, spare my family. Let me retire knowing I did one decent thing before I die. And if we refuse? Domenico asked. Then I go to the FBI with everything. The trafficking? Yes. But also the judges you own, the politicians on your payroll. All of it. I burn it all down, including myself. At least then. I go out doing what your mother, he looked at me, what Lucia would have wanted, ending it. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked between these two men, one offering me a crown built on suffering, the other offering me a chance to end that suffering at the cost of everything. Aurora, Domenico said carefully, we can still salvage this. Take the fortune, shut down the trafficking ourselves, keep the legitimate businesses. You don't have to. Yes, I do. My voice was steady now, certain. My mother ran from this. Died trying to keep me from it. I won't benefit from what destroyed her. You'll have nothing, Domenico said. No fortune, no power, just my protection and whatever life we build together. Is that enough for you? I asked, the question weighted with everything unsaid. Am I enough without the billions? Without the strategic advantage? Without the key to the city? He was silent for a long moment, his gold eyes searching mine. Then, slowly, he smiled. You've always been enough, Bella. The fortune was just a bonus. The queen I saw was never about the money. It was about you. Who you are. Who you're becoming. I turned to Giovanni. Tell me how to end it. All of it. The trafficking, the operations, everything. What followed were 3 days of intense planning. Giovanni provided locations, names, evidence meticulously documented over years. Domenico used his connections to coordinate with, improbably, the FBI. Agent Chen, a woman who'd been building a case against the Castellano operation for 5 years, nearly wept when we handed over Giovanni's evidence. This is everything, she said, reviewing the documents. We can shut down the entire network, rescue over 300 women currently being held, and dismantle an operation that's been running for 30 years. In exchange, Domenico said, Giovanni Russo gets immunity for himself and his family, full protection, new identities if needed. And Aurora Vitali gets nothing, Agent Chen observed, looking at me. You're walking away from billions. I'm walking away from blood money, I corrected. There's a difference. The raids happened simultaneously across 3 states. By the time the sun set 3 days later, the Castellano trafficking operation was destroyed. 317 women freed, 42 men arrested, and Giovanni Russo was on a plane to somewhere he'd never be found. His family safe, his conscience, if not clean, at least cleaner. I watched the news coverage from Domenico's penthouse, feeling strangely empty. I'd destroyed my inheritance, any claim to power or wealth beyond what Domenico could provide. I was back to being nobody, owned by a man I'd chosen, but still owned. Regrets? Domenico asked, joining me by the window. I don't know yet. Ask me in a year. Fair enough. His arm came around my waist. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. You could have taken the easy path, justified it, looked away from the suffering. But you didn't. My mother wouldn't have. No, she wouldn't. He turned me to face him. Which brings me to something I've been considering. Your mother was hidden, kept secret, denied her birthright. You've just given up your own birthright to do the right thing. Maybe it's time you claim something for yourself. Like what? He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and my breath caught. Your name, your place, your choice. He opened the box to reveal a ring, not ostentatious, but clearly expensive. White gold with a single perfect diamond. Marry me, Aurora. Not because I'm forcing you, not because you need protection, but because you want to. Choose me. Choose this life. Choose to be my queen, not by blood, but by partnership. That's not much of a choice. Where would I go if I said no? Anywhere you wanted. I meant what I said. The door's never been locked. You're not my prisoner, Bella. You're my partner, my equal, my queen. But only if you choose it. I looked at this man who'd stolen me, educated me, challenged me, who'd been willing to help me walk away from billions because I'd asked him to, who wanted me not for my bloodline or my strategic value, but for myself. Yes, I said, the word both surrender and victory. I choose you. I choose this. I choose to be your queen. His kiss was possessive, claiming, perfect. When we broke apart, he slipped the ring onto my finger. A perfect fit, of course. He'd probably known my ring size before he knew my favorite color. One condition, I said. Name it. Marco Vulture. He's still out there. Still a threat. Domenico's smile was sharp. Actually, about that. Marco had a heart attack 2 days ago. Natural causes, the doctors say. Though privately they're baffled by how exactly the poison got into his system. You killed him. I protected what's mine. There's a difference. No, there isn't. I kissed him anyway. But thank you. The wedding was small, private, just Domenico's inner circle, and Agent Chen, who'd become an unlikely ally in the aftermath of the Castellano raids. Elena cried. Carlo made a surprisingly touching speech about loyalty and love. And I became Aurora Barone, queen not by blood but by choice. The honeymoon was Domenico's penthouse, because leaving the city during a power vacuum seemed unwise. We spent 3 days there, alone, except for Elena's discreet delivery of meals, learning each other in ways that went beyond the physical. He told me about Sophia, about the guilt he carried. I told him about my mother, about the childhood spent wondering what I'd done to deserve my father's neglect. And slowly, we built something new. Not the relationship Giovanni had offered, freedom without protection. Not the possession Domenico had first claimed, but a partnership, equal and complicated and real. 6 months later, I stood in Domenico's office reviewing reports on the Barone family's legitimate businesses. Construction, shipping, restaurants. We'd been systematically cleaning the operations, cutting ties with the worst elements, building something that could withstand legal scrutiny. The Vitale family wants to discuss a partnership, Carlo reported during our weekly meeting. Legitimate ports operation, completely legal. Tell them we're interested, I said, making notes. But we'll need full transparency on their operations first. No surprises. After Carlo left, Domenico pulled me into his lap, his arms around my waist. Look at you, Queen Aurora, making business decisions, negotiating with families. You're terrifying. Good. I kissed him. Queens should be terrifying. Any regrets yet? I thought about the billions I'd walked away from, the fortune that could have bought anything. Then I looked around the office, maps marking legitimate operations, files detailing legal expansions, plans for a future that wasn't built entirely on blood and fear. None, I said honestly. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. His hand found my stomach, where the smallest curve was just beginning to show. Though this timeline has worked out rather well. I discovered the pregnancy 2 weeks ago. Unexpected, unplanned, and absolutely terrifying. Another life I'd be responsible for protecting in this dangerous world. We'll keep them safe, Domenico said, reading my thoughts as he always did. Both of them. That's what kings and queens do, Bella. We protect our own. Even from ourselves. especially from ourselves. I leaned back against his chest, looking out at the city we controlled together. Not through blood or birthright, but through choice and strategy, and a partnership built on honesty about what we were. I was Aurora Barone, sold to a vulture, stolen by a wolf, and crowned by my own hand. The daughter of a woman who died trying to escape this world, now ruling over it. The key that had unlocked not billions, but freedom. And beside me was a man who'd seen me at my weakest, my most desperate, my most valuable, and chose me anyway. Who'd offered me a kingdom and meant it. Who'd killed for me and would kill again. We were monsters, both of us. But we were monsters who'd chosen each other, built something real from blood and fear and possibility. In this city of concrete and shadows, we'd carved out a kingdom, not inherited, not stolen, but created through will and strategy and love that looked nothing like fairy tales but felt like home anyway. The vulture had tried to buy me. The wolf had tried to claim me. But in the end, I'd claimed myself. And the crown I wore wasn't given. It was taken, earned, built from the ruins of what could have been into something unexpected and dangerous and entirely mine. This was my story, my choice, my kingdom. And God help anyone who tried to take it from me.